John Schneider did it again this offseason, folks. On this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today, we will give you a full recap and analysis of every major move that John Schneider pulled off this offseason and give you our grades. We'll bring that to you coming up in just a matter of moments. Tyler Jones, your fearless leader, here with you. Thanks for joining us. Before we do, folks, I want to make sure you're subscribed to Seattle Seahawks Today as we are closing in on 67,500 subscribers of the channel, just a little over 170 away from reaching that next milestone. We're bringing you daily news and rumors. We have live shows twice a week. Our Madden Sims are coming back very, very soon. We just had a meeting about that this week. If you love the Seattle Seahawks, this is the channel for you. Stay locked in all offseason long. YouTube.com/SeahawksTV to subscribe now, and we'll get going with today's show. Schneider did it again. What an interesting offseason it was for the Seattle Seahawks as they made some big moves. They didn't have a ton of money to work with, and I think Schneider made the most of the opportunity that he had in front of him. What we're going to do is we're going to give our grades for every single major move that the Seahawks did and share our thoughts and kind of go rapid fire through these pretty quickly. So let's begin with the first move of the offseason. And this more came from Mike McDonald's department as Ryan Grubb, offensive coordinator, was fired. You're fired. Out of here. To me, that was an A grade. Look, I understand the Seahawks won 10 games, but the offense was so inconsistent. They could never get an opening drive touchdown. There was a lot of problems there. And I think the breaking point was the Bears game when they only scored 6 total points. This had to be done. They won 10 games this year in spite of Ryan Grubb, not because of Ryan Grubb. This change had to happen. It was the right decision. And then his replacement, Klint Kubiak, I give that an A. Klint Kubiak's got a good track record. I love, in particular, what he did in Minnesota. I give that hiring an A. And the scheme. Look, the other issue with what we saw in the previous regime under Ryan Grubb, that offense was not an NFL offense. You were trying to bring a Pac-12 offense to the National Football League and throw it 40-plus times a game. That wasn't going to work. You were going back to your bread and butter of how to be successful in the National Football League, running the football, making things easier for Sam Darnold. I think the scheme is a natural fit. Geno Smith was traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for a third-round pick that ended up turning into Jalen Hurts. And I'll give this a B+ because it was a good trade, but it wasn't a great trade. You got what you could. I can't imagine that too many teams were lining up to give up the farm for Geno Smith. But you got out of a bad situation. Geno didn't want to be there. He made that known. And he cost more money than Sam Darnold did. And you got a pick out of it. I think you made the most of the circumstance you had with trading Geno Smith. That wasn't the only trade. DK Metcalf was also traded. And this receiver room is going to look a lot different in 2025 with Tyler Lockett also released as well. I give that trade a B. It was a tough situation for Seattle to trade DK Metcalf, as I think that they waited too long if they were going to trade him. They probably should have traded him a couple of years ago. Felt like these last couple of years were wasted. They could have gotten more out of him, and he didn't want to be there. But at the end of the day, you still got a second-round pick. It could have been worse. I'll give it a B. Tough situation, not ideal, but you got somebody out there, and you don't have to pay DK either. I think it worked out, but it could have been better, so that's why I go B here. Then Ernest Jones was re-signed, and to me, this was a no-brainer decision by John Schneider and Mike McDonald to bring Ernest Jones back. You already made the investment, trading for him at the trade deadline. You got him at a very fair cost compared to how the market went for linebackers out there. He's just now entering his prime. I think this made a ton of sense for Seattle to bring back Ernest Jones and to get him that new deal. I liked it for Seattle. I'll go with an A there, and I think that his best football is still in front of him. He's going to be a really good football player. Now, our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break while the ads play. Get your votes in. Let us know what you think. How would you grade Seattle's offseason? I'll give you my overall grade at the end of today's show, but want to hear from you guys. A, B, C, D, or F. How do you think John Schneider did? Weigh in. Let us know in the comments section. The best move of all of what the Seahawks did was re-signing Josh Jobe to just a $2 million contract. A very affordable deal for a player that right now is one of their starting outside corners. I don't know if he is going to start when the season begins. But as I've stated previously, I can find a spot for Josh Jobe on this roster. I prefer him to be a backup, but at $2 million and with the production he put out there, this was a great call. And it's the best contract on this team. The best contract in the entire roster. Just $2 million, a one-year deal. And if he ends up being your starter, that's pretty good compared to the rest of the market. If you're only paying him that type of money for a veteran player, I like bringing Josh Jobe back for such a cheap cost like that. Jarran Reed also re-signed, and I got to give this one an A. Jarran Reed has been kind of the new vocal leader of this defense since we saw the departures of guys like Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs and among others here. He's taken that mantle, and he's held his own, and I think he still has a lot to offer. He has his struggles at times in run defense, but he's good when it comes to the pass rush. He plays well alongside Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. I thought it was great to bring back Jarran Reed. I'm excited to have him into the fold here to potentially finish out his career in Seattle. Then you found your replacement for Geno Smith, signing Sam Darnold. I'll go with an A- here. And I love the signing for a number of reasons. You got a younger and cheaper quarterback than what you had in Geno Smith. And I think you got a better quarterback than Geno Smith as well. The numbers that he had last year at Minnesota were far and away better than any season Geno Smith has had in his career. And not to mention, too, he had a bad offensive line he was working with in Minnesota, and he didn't let that be an excuse. But the reason why I have this an A- and not an A is there's a small sample size of Sam Darnold playing at a high level. He failed in Carolina. He failed with the New York Jets. You would like to think that Sam Darnold has turned a corner and that you have found your future franchise quarterback, but we don't know for certain. That's why I'm going with an A-. I'm optimistic, but time will tell. Cooper Kupp signed. I'll give that one an A-. It was a lot of money for Cooper Kupp, but I think there's still way more positives than are negatives here. He's from the state of Washington. It's a homecoming. He stays in the division, a chance to play the rival Rams twice a year. You got to imagine he'll be motivated. He won the Triple Crown a few years ago, leading the league in receptions and receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. But that year was a bit of an anomaly for him. I look at Cooper Kupp. I'm glad he's here, but the injuries have been an issue in the last few years, and typically that doesn't get better as you get older. I hope they kind of keep him to a pitch count in practices and in training camp and all that, because the most important thing is going to be the availability of Cooper Kupp. I can live with him missing a training camp practice if he's playing for my squad in December and January when it counts. And I think that's going to be important to keep tabs on. Up next, DeMarcus Lawrence, the edge rusher, signed. I'll go with a B+. You bring him over from the Dallas Cowboys. He's fired up to be here. He was talking his smack about his former team not too long ago. And this is a guy that has had a great career. And Mike McDonald has an excellent track record when it comes to these veteran pass rushers like the Kyle Van Noys, the Jadeveon Clowneys, those guys. Justin Houston, DeMarcus Lawrence should be up his alley. But the injuries are a concern. He only played 4 games last year, much like we talked about with Cooper Kupp. It doesn't look better as you get older here. I still think it's a good signing. It's a lot of money, but another reason why I give this a B+, although it looks like a lot of money, it's not a lot of guaranteed money. So if the injuries are an issue, or if you need to get out of that contract next year, if it doesn't work out, you have the opportunity to potentially do so. What was your favorite move of the offseason for the Seattle Seahawks? Whether it was a draft pick, a trade, a free agent signing, what was your favorite move? If you had to choose one, what would it be and why? Wait in that comment section and let us know. Rookie jerseys are available now, whether it's guys like Grey Zabel or Jalen Milroe and among others. We got their jerseys for you at chatsports.com/Seahawks rookies, and you'll get the jersey with their number on it, by the way. So something to keep in mind when you're ordering these things. And we have other rookies available. We also have other Seahawks players available. Maybe you want a Sam Darnold or a Cooper Kupp jersey, whatever it may be. Just go to that same link, chatsports.com/Seahawks rookies to get yours today. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. That's chatsports.com/Seahawks rookies to get yours now. Now, this was probably my least favorite move of the entire offseason. The Seahawks signing MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I give this one a D. And personally, I know that MVS had a good season with the New Orleans Saints last year, but he has failed one too many times. He got caught by the Kansas City Chiefs, had a golden opportunity in Kansas City when they'd moved on from Tyreek Hill. They were looking for help from anybody. That receiver room was depleted, and he didn't do much. He goes to the Buffalo Bills, and they were in kind of a similar boat that Kansas City was in a couple of years ago. They were needing some help after moving on from Stephon Diggs, and he couldn't even make the roster in Buffalo last year. He has failed one too many times. But he played well in Kubiak's system, so that's why I give it a D as opposed to an F here. And I don't like that you're asking him to be the number 3 receiver in this offense. I think that's too big of a role for him, for somebody who's been largely inconsistent in his career, and the best thing that he can do is draw a defensive pass interference penalty from time to time. I did not like this signing. I'm not a fan of it. I'll go with a D. It was the biggest mistake of any player that was signed, but they did so well with the other signings. It's one I can still kind of live with. D'Anthony Bell at the safety spot, I'll give a B+. Mike McDonald and company have already talked about that they have plans to potentially use him as a third safety option. And you also drafted Nick Emmanwori. We'll talk about him later. I think at the very least it's a good depth piece. And if you have an injury, D'Anthony Bell can step in and he could start at one of the safety spots if needed. I like it for Seattle of signing D'Anthony Bell. Then at the draft, Sam Howell was traded, as that allowed the Seahawks to move up in the 5th round by sending him off to the Minnesota Vikings. You signed Drew Lock, so you didn't necessarily need Sam Howell anymore, and I'll give this one an A. It was time. I think you got enough of a sample size that you felt good with where you were at with the quarterback position, not to mention the Jalen Milroe situation. We'll talk about him coming up later. I think that you got what you could out of the situation. You tried it with Sam Howell. It didn't work out, and that's okay, and you moved on from there. It didn't really cost you a ton. I think that made a ton of sense. Now let's go over some of the draft picks for Seattle. Let's start with Grey Zabel. I know some people would have liked Seattle to trade down and still get him and get some more value in the draft, but they didn't get an offer they liked. But they got the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. He played tackle at North Dakota State. He's going to move to the guard spot here in Seattle. I'm going to go with an A. You filled a major need with the signing, with the draft pick of Grey Zabel here. You got a guy who can step in and start day one. I think it was an excellent selection for the Seattle Seahawks to go with Grey Zabel. And then you go with Nick Emmanwori in the 2nd round. Traded up to 35 to snag him up out of South Carolina. Most people had a first-round grade on him. I did too. We were talking about him potentially being Seattle's pick, maybe even at 18. This was a home run pick for Seattle. They got a guy that's got star potential in this league. I'm very high on Nick Emmanwori, and he's already seen some snaps at the nickelback spot. They're talking about using him as a third safety. Emmanwori is going to be on the football field right away. Now, with all these changes the Seahawks have made, are they a better team now than they were in 2024? They won 10 games. They were co-division champions. Tiebreaker went to the Rams. Is this a better team? I think it is. What do you guys think? Type Y for yes, in for no. Chime in and let me know what you think. More draft picks for you. Let's talk about some of the top draft picks for Seattle. Elijah Arroyo, I give this one an A. I was a big fan of Elijah Arroyo coming out. I think he's got real star potential in this league, and you have to stop thinking about how Seattle's used this tight end position in the past, where they've kind of ignored it in the passing game. Elijah Arroyo is going to come in and be a natural fit for what Clint Kubiak wants to do. Kubiak wants to throw the football and use his tight ends. I think Arroyo is going to quickly climb up the depth chart, and he might even be your tight end one before the season begins. I think he can be a star in this league. I love the pick of Arroyo. Big Texas guy, too. Jalen Milroe, I'll give this a B+. Very unusual for the Seahawks to draft a quarterback, not something that they do too often. They passed on Shedeur Sanders in order to go with Jalen Milroe. I have some question marks, some concerns about Jalen Milroe. He's got a lot of work to do when it comes to his accuracy as a quarterback. That's why I go with a B+. But I'm intrigued. This is one that's worth a shot that you use just a third-round pick on. He doesn't have to be your franchise quarterback. If he becomes that, that's kosher. That's great if he does. But at the very least, we've already heard Mike McDonald, some rumblings about using a two-quarterback system where you get him and Darnold on the field together. Maybe it's the tush push or some wildcat packages. The opportunities are endless with Jalen Milroe as far as that goes. Rylie Mills out of Notre Dame was drafted. I'll go with a B+. And for Rylie Mills, this is about the long-term play here. We might not even see him in 2025 after he tore his ACL in the college football playoff this past season. But even with that said, this was somebody that, had he been healthy, would have gone much higher. He checks off all the boxes you're looking for at the defensive tackle spot. He's a really good pass rusher here. I like the opportunity. Take the chance. I'll go B+, but because of the injuries, we'll stay with B+, not go higher than that. Torrey Horton, we'll go with a B+ as well. Lots of potential with Torrey Horton here. He's coming off an injury. That's also why we go B+ here, because he's not fully healthy. But that allowed you the opportunity for him to slide as much as he did. But once he gets healthy, I think that we very well may be talking about Horton being the number 3 receiver in this offense. He is that good. He's got that much talent. And I think you're going to be able to stretch the field and find ways to get him involved right away once he's out there. And then one more draft pick we'll talk about today is Robbie Oots, who they selected out of Alabama. He was a tight end. They're going to convert him to a fullback. I'll go C+. I don't think Oots is a bad football player, but a fullback that you're changing positions, and there was still a lot of good players on the board, I think was a bit of a reach. I think it was the worst of the draft picks Seattle made. But because the rest of the offseason and the rest of the draft was so good, I'm okay with it. It's fine with me. It's not the end of the world that you used that pick on Robbie Oots there. So, speaking of the draft, who was your favorite Seahawks draft pick? If you had to name one player, who would it be and why? No wrong answers. Just want to hear from you guys. Weigh in and let us know. So final thoughts, I'll put it this way. When I look back at this offseason, John stepped out of his comfort zone a bit, found a new quarterback, moved on from DK Metcalf, said goodbye to Tyler Lockett, found a new quarterback in Sam Darnold, drafted a QB, traded up for an interior lineman, brings in Cooper Kupp. Some bold moves. And at the end of the day, this is a better team than it was at the end of 2024. And with what they've done in the draft and the young players they already have in the system, this team is built for the future. The vibes are immaculate. Things are looking up for the Seattle Seahawks. John Schneider, his back was against the wall. Pressure was on, and he responded accordingly. I'll give the overall grade for Seattle this offseason an A-. It was a very good offseason. It wasn't perfect. Got some questions about MVS and Robbie Oots, but I think it's a huge step in the right direction, especially for second-year head coach Mike McDonald. You got the right head coach. Now you got him the right offensive coordinator into the fold. Things are looking good from here for the Seattle Seahawks. For more Seahawks coverage, subscribe now to Seattle Seahawks Today for the latest happenings on your favorite team all offseason long. YouTube.com/SeahawksTV. I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time.